There are days when you wake up already tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight you carried yesterday. A harsh word that still echoes in your chest. A look of disappointment you cannot forget. A silence at the dinner table that felt heavier than any argument. You tell yourself it is nothing. You say you are fine. And yet, something inside you keeps tightening quietly, stubbornly. Have you ever noticed how one small moment can take control of your entire day? A single comment can replay in your mind 100 times. Anger rises before you can stop it. Sadness settles before you even understand why. You try to hold it in. You try to stay calm. But the more you resist, the stronger it seems to become. How many times have you swallowed your frustration just to keep the peace? How many nights have you laid awake, replaying conversations, wishing you had reacted differently? How often have you smiled on the outside while something inside you felt bruised and unseen? I know this place, not from theory, not from books, but from long evenings of sitting alone with emotions I did not know how to carry. From moments when I thought strength meant suppressing everything. From years of believing that controlling emotions meant becoming cold, distant, untouched. But emotions do not disappear when ignored. They wait, they gather, they grow in the dark. The Stoic way is not about becoming stone. It is not about pretending you do not feel. It begins somewhere much quieter than that. It begins in the space between what happens and how you choose to respond. A small space, almost invisible, yet powerful enough to change the direction of your life. What if the problem is not that you feel too much, but that you have never been shown how to stand beside your emotions without being dragged by them? What if calm is not the absence of feeling, but the presence of inner steadiness? Tonight, I want to walk with you into that space, not to silence your emotions, not to judge them, but to understand them differently. And in the next part, we will gently uncover where true control truly begins. When someone hurts us, we often believe the pain comes directly from their action. A sharp tone, a careless remark, a betrayal we did not expect. It feels personal, it feels intentional, and so the wound forms quickly, as if their behavior has reached inside and defined our worth. But if we slow down just enough to observe, instead of react, another layer begins to appear. People act from the level of understanding they currently have, from their fears, from their habits, from the invisible burdens they carry. A person who speaks harshly may have grown up in a home where harshness was the only language of strength. A friend who withdraws instead of explaining may have learned that vulnerability leads to rejection. A parent who criticizes constantly may believe they are protecting you from a cruel world, not realizing they are becoming part of that cruelty. This does not excuse harmful behavior. It does not mean we should tolerate injustice or silence ourselves, but it shifts something important. It reminds us that when others act, they are revealing their perception of reality, not announcing our value. Imagine a colleague at work who dismisses your idea in a meeting. The room goes quiet. You feel small, embarrassed. But what if that colleague is deeply insecure, threatened by anything that challenges their position? Their reaction may be less about your competence and more about their fear of losing control. Or think about a sibling who constantly compares you, pointing out what you lack. It may sting every time. Yet perhaps they measure you because they have spent their entire life measuring themselves. Their criticism might be a projection of their own dissatisfaction, not a judgment carved in truth about who you are. Even in society, when strangers judge quickly or speak with contempt, it often reveals the narrow frame through which they see the world. People respond according to their beliefs, their conditioning, their unexamined assumptions. They do not see the whole of you. They see only what their perception allows. The Stoic perspective gently asks us to separate two things that we usually fuse together: what others do and what we are. Their action belongs to them. Their intention, their ignorance, their emotional immaturity. These remain within their sphere. Our character, our integrity, our response, these belong to us. When we take every insult as proof of our inadequacy, we surrender our inner ground. We allow someone else's temporary emotion to become a permanent mark on our identity. But if we understand that people act from their own level of awareness, we begin to loosen the knot. We can still feel hurt, but we are less likely to turn that hurt into self-condemnation. This understanding is not cold. It is not detached in a cruel way. It is compassionate. It recognizes that human beings are often unconscious of the impact they create. Many wounds are passed down unconsciously, repeated without reflection. When someone acts poorly, they may simply be acting out the only pattern they know. And yet, even when we see this clearly, even when we remind ourselves that their behavior reflects their perception and not our worth, something inside still aches. The chest still tightens. The mind still replays the scene. So if we understand all this, if we know their actions are about them, then why do we still feel pain? It is late now. The world outside has quieted, but inside you the noise is still there. The memory, the tone, the look in their eyes. You understand, at least intellectually, that their behavior reflects their own limits. And yet, the ache remains. Why? Perhaps because beneath the surface of every hurt, there was an expectation, not always spoken, sometimes not even conscious. You expected to be treated with respect. You expected to be understood. You expected that the people close to you would see your effort, your intention, your heart. Expectation is subtle. It grows quietly in the spaces where we care. The more we value someone, the more invisible agreements we create. They should know me by now. They would not do that if they truly cared. After all I have given, I deserve something different. These thoughts do not sound unreasonable. In fact, they sound human. But when expectation meets reality, and reality does not cooperate, the collision hurts. There is also attachment, not only to people, but to images. The image of how a conversation should unfold, the image of who we are in someone else's eyes, the image of being appreciated, respected, chosen. When that image cracks, it feels as if something inside us has cracked with it. We suffer not only because of what happened, but because of what did not happen. You hoped for warmth and received indifference. You offered honesty and received avoidance. You stayed loyal and were met with distance. The mind keeps saying, "It should have been different." And that quiet resistance to what already is becomes a second wound layered over the first. There is another layer too. The desire to be recognized, to be seen clearly, to have someone acknowledge your effort without you having to defend it, to feel that your presence matters. When someone dismisses you or misunderstands you, it can feel like erasure, as if your inner world has been reduced to a single, unfair interpretation. That is painful because identity is fragile. We build it slowly through years of experience. We tell ourselves who we are: capable, kind, loyal, strong. When someone's reaction contradicts that story, it shakes the structure. Even if their view is distorted, the doubt slips in. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am not enough. Maybe I deserve that. This is where suffering deepens. Not in the event itself, but in the meaning we attach to it. The Stoic spirit does not deny that these feelings arise. It does not demand that you become numb. It does not ask you to suppress the sting or pretend indifference. Emotions are natural responses. They move through the body before thought has time to organize them. To feel is human. But there is a difference between feeling an emotion and being carried away by it. An emotion can be a wave, strong, sudden, cold. It can pass through you, or it can become a current that drags you far from yourself. The Stoic path gently suggests that while you may not control the first wave, you are not required to surrender to the current. Pain often persists because we continue feeding it with interpretation. We replay the moment. We argue with it in our minds. We imagine different outcomes. We rehearse confrontations that may never happen. Each repetition strengthens the emotional imprint. The original wound might have been small, but the story we build around it makes it grow. There is also pride, quiet pride, the part of us that says, "I should not have been treated that way." This pride is not arrogance. It is a longing for dignity. And when dignity feels threatened, the heart defends itself fiercely. All of this is deeply human. Expectation, attachment, the need for recognition, the defense of identity. None of it makes you weak. None of it makes you foolish. But perhaps suffering lingers because we hold too tightly to what was never fully ours to control. We hold on to how others should act, how they should understand us, how they should respond. And when reality refuses to obey those inner demands, the tension remains inside us. So the question is not whether we feel pain. We will. The question is what we do in the quiet moment after the pain arrives. Do we fuse with it? Or do we observe it? In that still space, something subtle becomes possible. Not suppression, not denial, but a small distance between you and the storm. A space where you can see the expectation, the attachment, the longing for validation, without immediately becoming them. And in the next part, we will step into that space more deliberately. Not with force, but with practice. Now we come to the quiet practice. Not a dramatic change, not a sudden transformation, just a steadier way of standing when something inside you is shaken. Imagine you are in a conversation, someone interrupts you repeatedly. At first, it feels small, then irritation rises. In that moment, the Stoic practice begins with a simple distinction: what is happening outside of you and what is forming within you. Their interruption belongs to them. The tightening in your chest belongs to you. You may not control their manners, but you can notice the first spark of reaction before it becomes a flame. That small pause is not weakness. It is sovereignty. Another day, a friend forgets an important promise. You waited. You rearranged your schedule. They arrive late, casual, unapologetic. The old impulse might be to demand change, to force them to see your disappointment. Yet the Stoic principle here is quieter. It asks you to return to your inner ground. You can communicate calmly. You can clarify boundaries. But your stability does not depend on reshaping their personality. You focus on responding with clarity rather than trying to control their awareness. There is also the practice of examining judgment. A colleague criticizes your work. The first thought might be, they do not respect me. But between the event and that conclusion, there is interpretation. Stoic discipline gently invites you to question the story forming in your mind. Is the criticism entirely rejection? Could it be clumsy communication? Could it be their own pressure speaking? By softening the certainty of your assumptions, you soften the intensity of your emotional reaction. In family life, this becomes especially meaningful. A parent speaks in a way that feels dismissive. You have heard that tone since childhood. It triggers something old. Here, the practice is not to erase history. It is to recognize that the present moment is separate from the past memory. You can feel the echo without letting it define your current response. You breathe. You answer the words that were actually spoken, not the entire history attached to them. Another principle is remembering the limits of your influence. You may wish someone would understand you fully. You may wish they would apologize in exactly the way you imagine, but their insight unfolds on its own timeline. When you release the effort to manage their inner world, energy returns to your own. You begin asking quieter questions. Is my response aligned with my character? Am I acting in a way that I can respect later? This shift moves attention from changing them to shaping yourself. There is strength in choosing proportion. Not every offense deserves the same weight. When a stranger makes a careless remark, you can see it as a brief contact between two passing perspectives. It does not need to become a personal verdict. When someone close to you acts thoughtlessly, you can decide how much space it occupies in your mind. Proportion protects your peace. And there is the practice of acceptance, not approval, not agreement, simply acknowledging reality as it stands. This conversation happened. These words were spoken. This feeling has arisen. Resistance often multiplies distress. Acceptance reduces friction. From that calmer place, wiser action becomes possible. All of these principles return to one center, your inner domain. You may not command how others speak, behave, or interpret you, but you can cultivate steadiness in how you perceive, evaluate, and respond. This is not indifference. It is deliberate composure. With time, this practice feels less like effort and more like orientation. You begin to sense the difference between reacting and choosing, the difference between being pulled and standing. The world remains unpredictable. People remain imperfect, yet something inside you grows more stable, and in that stability, there is space. Space to feel without being overwhelmed. Space to act without resentment. Space to let others be as they are, while you remain anchored in who you decide to be. The tension softens. The breath deepens. Nothing outside has necessarily changed. But within you, the ground feels firmer, quieter, lighter. There was a time when I believed strength meant winning. winning arguments, winning respect, winning the silent competitions that unfold in conversations, in workplaces, even within families. I thought if I could prove myself right often enough, if I could defend my position sharply enough, I would finally feel secure. But victory over others has a short breath. It rises quickly. It fades just as quickly. To win against someone usually means they must lose. And when another person loses, something subtle changes in the air between you. Pride replaces understanding. Distance replaces warmth. You may walk away with the upper hand, yet carry a heaviness you cannot explain. The Stoic spirit matures beyond that hunger. It begins to see that most conflicts are not battles to be conquered, but reflections of different fears, different perspectives, different stages of growth. When you no longer feel compelled to dominate the exchange, something relaxes inside you. You listen more. You react less. You choose your words not to defeat, but to remain aligned with your own clarity. There is a quiet dignity in not needing the last word. Winning an argument may satisfy the ego. Keeping your mind undisturbed nourishes something deeper. The first depends on external recognition. The second depends only on your inner alignment. One is loud and visible. The other is almost invisible but far more enduring. Consider a moment when someone misunderstands you and refuses to see your explanation. You could push harder. You could gather evidence. Sharpen your tone. Insist on correction. And perhaps you would succeed. They might finally concede. Yet ask yourself, would that guarantee peace inside you? Or would it only prove that you were more persistent? There is a subtle freedom in allowing others to keep their version of you, not because you agree, not because you are weak, but because your identity is no longer at the mercy of their perception. When you stop trying to manage how you are seen, you reclaim energy that was quietly draining away. To win over someone else is to control a moment. To preserve your inner composure is to control yourself. The difference is profound. One reshapes the surface. The other strengthens the foundation. As we grow older, we begin to notice that many of our past victories cost us more than we realized. Harsh words spoken in the name of being right. Relationships strained to protect pride. Nights spent replaying disputes long after the conversation ended. In hindsight, the triumph feels small compared to the disturbance it created. The Stoic path does not reject excellence. It does not discourage standing firm in truth, but it removes the need for conquest. You can speak clearly without aggression. You can disagree without hostility. You can walk away without bitterness. There is immense power in choosing not to escalate. When someone attempts to provoke you and you respond with steadiness, the exchange transforms. You are no longer participating in a contest of dominance. You are choosing stability over superiority. And stability has a quiet authority that rarely needs to announce itself. Over time, this becomes liberation. You realize that your peace does not depend on applause. It does not require validation. It does not demand that others admit fault. You begin to measure success differently. Not by how many arguments you won, but by how often you remained centered. Not by how many people you impressed, but by how lightly you carry your own mind. Inner freedom feels spacious. It is the absence of the constant urge to defend, the absence of the restless need to prove, the absence of the silent scorekeeping that once governed your interactions. In that space, relationships breathe more easily. so do you. And eventually you see that the greatest victory is invisible. It is the moment you could have fought and chose calm, the moment you could have insisted and chose clarity, the moment you could have stayed to argue and quietly stepped away. It is like standing at a crossroads at dusk. One path leads back into noise and contest. The other stretches forward in stillness. You do not slam the door. You do not announce your departure. You simply turn and begin walking down the quieter road where the light grows softer and the air feels wider. And with each step, you leave the need to win behind you. By now, the room is quiet. Not because the world has changed, but because something inside you has softened. Stoic strength was never loud. It never needed to declare itself. It did not promise a life without hurt. It simply offered a different way to stand within it. There will still be misunderstandings, still moments of tension, still words that land heavier than expected. But perhaps now you see them differently, not as verdicts, not as proof of your inadequacy, not as battles to win, just events passing through. The Stoic spirit does not erase feeling, it allows it, then watches it. It does not chase approval, it does not resist reality, it does not rush to defend. It returns again and again to what can be shaped quietly within. A thought, a response, a posture of mind. There is something deeply human in this restraint, not coldness, not distance, but care. Care for the state of your own inner world. You begin to notice that peace is not dramatic. It does not arrive with applause. It does not announce its presence. It feels like space. Space between stimulus and reply. Space between emotion and identity, space between what was said and what you choose to carry. And in that space, you are no longer pulled so easily. Someone may misunderstand you. You breathe. Someone may criticize you. You listen. Someone may walk away. You remain. Not rigid, not indifferent, simply steady. This steadiness does not make you superior. It makes you free. Free from the endless cycle of reaction, free from the exhausting need to control, free from the silent war of proving and defending. There is dignity in that freedom, a quiet dignity. Over time, you may find that what once disturbed you now passes more lightly, not because you have hardened, but because you have learned to let things move through you without settling. You no longer hold every word. You no longer replay every moment. You no longer measure yourself by every gaze. You begin to trust something deeper, that your character is shaped in silence, that your worth does not fluctuate with opinion. That calm is not weakness. It is clarity. Life will continue to test you. It always does. But the test is no longer about defeating others. It is about remaining aligned with yourself. In the end, Stoicism is not a shield against life. It is a way of walking through it. With open eyes, with a measured heart, with fewer unnecessary battles. And when the noise rises again, as it will, you may remember this quiet space within you. You may return to it slowly, gently, and perhaps that is enough, because sometimes the greatest strength is simply this: to remain unmoved when everything around you tries to move you.